Everybody, happy Saturday. I guess we can go ahead and get started. So today it is the 11th Chats with Fire, and I have on Ben Strahan, right? Okay,
Yep.
perfect. I wanted to make
Love it.
sure I was getting that right. Um, we have been talking about doing a chat probably, I don't know, for a good handful of weeks, and just with life and things getting in the way, it's kind of been hectic, but super thankful to have you on. I'm really looking forward to this. Ben and I were chatting a few minutes ago about kind of his niche. So we're possibly going to be getting into like some alternative medicine, different things with mental health. But I figured before we get there, we can have Ben kind of just give a little background, maybe how you even got into fire, and then just kind of roll from there.
Cool. For sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure, first off. I think it's great that there's more folks like yourself creating this space for people to share their stories. So I think it's a beautiful thing. Um, yeah. How I got started, what relates me to you and I is my career path that I've chosen, right? It's the wildland fire thing that I've been up to. So I currently hold the position of a superintendent on the Dorado Hotshots on the Dorado National Forest. Um, I'm going into my 23rd fire season, and I started in 2001. Hopefully that math works out correctly. And uh, I live in a town called Garden Valley on the El Dorado National Forest. I went to a small, really small school, and how I got into fire was a young man looking to do something that was meaningful in his life, and wildland firefighting or firefighting in general seemed like a
Mhm.
good option for me. So my school was pretty ahead of its time, maybe potentially back then. They had something called an ROP program. What that acronym means, honestly, I have no idea. I really honestly should look this up and figure it out because every time I get interviewed,
Oh
I say
no,
I have no idea what
you can
ROP
just make
means.
it up. It's fine.
But yeah, exactly. So, but at the end of the day, they gave us our basic certifications to enter the fire service. So back then it was I think it was called the basic 32. Now I think it's
Okay.
called the basic 40. So I got my basic 32, and 2 days after graduating high school, I was entering the workforce as working on an engine on the Tahoe National Forest. And to be quite honest with you, it wasn't really like necessarily what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to be a wildland firefighter, right? When you're a child, when you think of firefighting, you think of red trucks and suspender straps and like things like this. So it took me to about 2003 to understand that this is the career path I wanted to take. And it was after experiencing a fire in San Diego in Southern California called the Cedar Fire. And it was the largest fire, if I remember correctly, in California history at the time. And we were doing some pretty heroic stuff, it seemed like to me. And me personally got recognized for the work that we were doing by one of the incident commanders. And that really kind of sparked this maybe purpose or this like motivation to continue in the line of working with the United States Forest Service. And so and that created a question like, what is the furthest I can take this? Like, where can I go with this career? What's the ultimate, right? And so uh, I was very motivated to become a smoke jumper and tried to do that training and stuff, and it didn't work out. In 2006, I was hoping to get a job, and it didn't work out, and that's okay. And I had to quickly readjust my plans. So I was like, okay, well, the next best thing that I felt was becoming a hotshot. Got on a hotshot crew, and on the American River Hotshots, and immediately had some very beautiful moments where I realized that this was the ultimate for me, was becoming a hotshot. So, and yeah, set a plan in 2006, which was my first year, and to become a hotshot superintendent, and that's what I got in oh my gosh, in 2000 I became a hotshot superintendent, and that's kind of how I started my career path. Now, I think it's worthy to note that it's not it's if since we're going to be talking about mental health and stuff, is like my job is just one very small
Yeah.
fraction of who I am as a person. It's not necessarily my identity, even though that is something that happens to a lot of people, and that's okay. But it's at some point we need to recognize that our job is not who we are necessarily, right? There's many aspects to it. So I very much enjoy my job, and it's where we have to talk about it in this space because that's what connects and that's what the audience is mostly going to be comprised of. But I do many, 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 many other
I'm
things.
I'm really glad that you
Mm-hmm.
brought that up as well. I know for myself personally, I work seasonally or like as an AD, and that's by choice. I love the flexibility of that, especially now with a business. But it is
Mm-hmm.
difficult, even not being a permanent employee. It's difficult to kind of set that boundary and say, okay, this is something that I do, but this is not who I am. And I've had to kind of step back and be like, hey, outside of fire and the business that revolves around fire, like what makes me who I am and who am I? So I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think a lot of people do struggle with, I guess, identity outside of fire. It's intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the things through the process of, I'm very, very vocal about my past, right? Like if people want to go explore the many podcasts that I've been on, you can just search in the Spotify and my name comes up. So, but I'm very vocal about the process of me just kind of going through this self-discovery in a way to determine and understand this identity thing, right? And to the point where it took me so far to a moment in my life where I was struggling very much with suicide, and it had been, and it was after the season of 2020, after I'd reached this goal, right? Like I had nothing to be like, oh my God, I reached my goal. I should have been so happy. And I was happy. Don't get me wrong. I was very joyous about that, but there's this aspect of me that felt lost and unfulfilled and like, now what type of thing. And the identity stuff was coming up, and I'll get more into the identity stuff. But one of the things I realized, and it's a very short little thing that I remind myself, is I am, I am when I am not. And how to break that term up is I get to be closer to who I am when I realize that all the things that I label myself as can change, right? So, like, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my career, I'm not my name, even, I'm not the place I live, like, I'm not any of these things because all of these things can be changed, right? So, how can I identify with something that can change? And if you look at it, like, there's many, many great philosophers in the world that have said things like no man steps in the same river twice, right? Because the water's constantly flowing, right? So understanding that life changes, every aspect of life is constantly changing, even from a cellular level, like our cells regenerate every 7 years. So like even us, this body is not actually the same, right? So, and being able to actually describe what we are is an impossible task because a human is a concept, right? And concepts are beautiful. Concepts are beautiful because they help us communicate, but concepts also lack a little bit of information from us being able to actually describe what something truly is. Like if I call you a human, that's a concept, but what is happening, the chemistry experiment under your skin is like, well, how do you describe that, right? It's not, it's limiting in a way. So to be able to like really live a very fulfilled and excellent life from my perspective is to understand that concepts lack information, right? I lack a little bit of information. So identifying with a concept, it doesn't really actually describe something. But because we create concepts, we can create these things that I call realities, right? A reality to me is my job. A reality to me is being a husband. A reality to me is being a son or a father, or when I'm on my mountain bike, a mountain biker, or when I'm on my snowboard, a
Mhm.
snowboarder, and on and on and on and on. Our concepts allow us to create our realities, right? And all of these realities, endless realities, we can
Yes.
change concepts even, which is crazy. And even and a concept to you may be, we may be looking at this conceptual thing like a cup. We may be looking at a cup, but your perspective, right? Like my perspective of that cup might, the concept of that construct might change versus how you see it, right? So like it's individual concepts can be different as well. The point I'm trying to make is specifically in the world of fire or any aspects of life, sometimes when we identify with a specific, like our job, for instance, for example, we try and we have a set of values for our specific career, right? For instance, in fire, our value set is kind of given to us, like duty, respect, and integrity. That's like the Forest Service's value system, right? And so we get told this as young men and women, and we use this value set, and then we try and, because we this is the value set that we have, and we may not have identified other values in our life and other aspects, we try and apply this same value set into all these other realities that we have, right? But duty, respect, and integrity doesn't really operate very well, very efficiently when I'm playing
Right.
Legos on the floor with my kid, or when I'm smashing on my mountain bike going downhill, right? Like my value system might change, right? So this fluctuation into realities, right? We compartmentalize these realities and we try and live amongst each one of them very differently, right? And so you're trying to like, like whatever the values, and it's very confusing and very difficult, right? And we hear these terms all the time as well. I don't bring my home life into the work. I don't bring work back home. And to me, I think that to me, that's always been a trap. Instead of embracing the fact that what we should be doing is identifying a set of values that exist amongst all of our realities at the same time, so we can live amongst all of our realities at the same time. So you have, because when I'm at home, when I'm at work, I'm still a father and I'm still a husband. I'm still all these things. And when I'm at home, I'm still a firefighter. I'm still a mom. I mean, I'm all these things, right?
Right.
So why would I compartmentalize them? Instead, if you can take a step back and build a set of values that work with all of them, now you're living a much more efficient life. And so, so the question could be is like, what are my set of values? So my set of values is number one, that at least ranked number one, is to value life above all else, because it's not your life, it's not my life, even though we like to think that. It's life. It's life is something that embraces everything. If I can look at life and value life as a whole, now I'm not placing labels, I'm not conceptualizing too many things. I'm trying to see individual things as they truly are, which is something that is beautiful and undescribable, right? Without concepts. Number two is to be the love, right? It's the one
Yeah.
thing that we all wish we had more of. It's the one thing that we fear the most, is not being loved, right? So if we can be that, then that's a great thing to be, right? Because now you're just
Right.
embracing love all around you. The second one for me, or the third one, I'm sorry, is the have a willingness to learn, so that old labeling, old programming
Mm-hmm.
can continue to evolve, and you can learn from anything. I can learn from this conversation. I can learn from my child. I can learn
Right.
from stubbing my toe, like whatever it is. And then the fourth one for me is living a life of servitude, which is in a lot of ways creating a space like we are now, so that people can join the conversation, feel their authenticity, feel free to express themselves in a way that allows them to understand this, what I'm talking about.
That's very, very powerful. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Let us sink in.
Wow, that is so profound. um, the older I get, I tend to do quite a bit of self-reflection, and sometimes it's like to a fault, but I'm working on it. Um, But I feel like I've been through the phase and I struggle with this, and I feel like other people do as well, where we say, this is just the kind of person I am. This is this is just what I do. And I'm coming like I'm very much coming around to this concept that even the things that we say about ourselves, those really morph our beliefs. And so kind of tying in with what you were saying about concepts, or like, you are a human, I am a human, but what does that mean? So by saying I'm this kind of a person, I'm a workaholic, I'm lazy, I'm not a morning person, the language I think that we use to speak about ourselves as well, that's very powerful in our whole self construct, our realities and whatnot. And so I think that's worth noting too, is the things that we say about ourselves or other people or our realities, that very much impacts what we perceive as our realities as well. So that's
Mhm.
that's been
Absolutely.
a big thing for me, especially within the past like year or two, just coming around to how do I speak about myself and others in the world and concepts.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something I've learned very, very recently, actually, is where I've come to an understanding is how we label ourselves in like a negative way, or like let's just take this adventure you're doing with like the your business or whatever, and this thing, and then your career or whatever things you're trying to do. Um, our societies, our cultures do a really good job of like telling us that we need these certain things to kind of fit the
Absolutely.
role, right? Like you need the house, you need the white picket fence, you need the Labrador, you need, you know what I mean? You need the
2.7
family, you
children.
need to make X amount of money. Yeah, yeah, you gotta have you gotta have the cars and whatever it is, right? There's a lot of social pressure to like fit this role, but and by not achieving those things creates this fear, right? Can create this fear. I don't want to say does, but like can create a fear. And so we do this to ourselves in the same ways, right? Like we start this new adventure, like, and I was just going through this, right? Because I'm trying to start a podcast, or I want to start a podcast. And no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say try or want to. I'm going to start a podcast. And I had this fear, right? That like, oh my gosh, like, what if I can't do this? Like, what does this mean? And I'm not going to be able to apply my other aspects of myself in other ways, like in my job or with my family or whatever, right? And this fear builds inside of you. And fear in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's an emotion that we have. Like, so we can't ignore that it doesn't exist. And if we look at fear correctly, right? The biggest fear that most people have, at least I have had as a person, is, and I would say this is pretty true for just about everybody. If you really get real with what your fear is, it's a fear of not being loved. When you open your heart and you can see that love exists everywhere, it's literally what everything's made out of. Like the energy of love is literally everywhere. And we can talk about how I discovered this later, but like, but it's literally everywhere. So if you embrace that that's the truth, then the fear of not being loved fades away. And so, but you can start to look at fear in a different way and use fear as a different tool, right? So, like, you want to start a new endeavor, fear builds inside of you, right? And this fear might, if it builds too much, manifests into this fear of not being loved. But what fear can also do is help a person create something new in their life, right? Create something better, right? If someone is racing in a track meet or whatever, a 100-yard dash, like their fear of not getting a time, not for being loved, but that thing could create this motivation inside of them to achieve and to create something new and beautiful. And I think that is a beautiful part about fear. The opposing side of fear is doubt. And that is the problem that keeps us from creating. So if we are talking about things that make us scared or make us second guess ourselves about endeavors that we do, or question an identity about ourselves, or whatever the concept is in general, if the fear is creating doubt, then that is a place that we want to move away from, and we want to use fear to create creation, to help us create creation. And that is the beauty of what humans are able to do, right? We you look at a you look at a cat or whatever, and they exist in this pure state of being, right? They're not trying to be anything else but a dog and a cat, right? It seems like, but the but humans are so perplexed about being something instead of just
Yeah, totally.
being, right? And it's also really cool though to have that as a problem, because it's our emotions and our concepts, like we talked about, our realities, our fear, the way we can express fear and love and joy and hatred and all these things, that gives us the opportunity to create something
100%.
better. And I think is that is
Yeah.
something that's really cool.
Well, it kind of makes me think it will take like the work thing, for instance. So, and I've contemplated this before. Um, say someone is in a job that they don't particularly enjoy, and you say, okay, we'll change jobs and find something that you enjoy. Okay, well, at the I would say ultimately, like at the root of that person's thought process, they are afraid of leaving the comfort, leaving the security of that job. Okay, but at the root of that, why are they afraid of losing their job? Well, they're afraid of not being able to make money. Why are they afraid of not being able to make money? Okay, well, they need to eat, so they need money to eat. Okay, well, at the end of the day, you don't have money to eat, so what is your fear? Okay, well, I'm going to be hungry. So, like, all of those, like, typical things that we fear in life, once you start breaking them down, I think they become very like basic needs, wants, and desires. Like you said, like the dog just thinks like food, just eat the food. Like there's no, oh well, what if this makes me look fat, or what if this isn't the right food, or what if somebody gets angry that I'm eating meat and I should be a vegan, like, whatever it is. Once we start breaking down all of those fears, I think they can be potentially, I don't know, like at a semi basic level, and we complicate things very much so.
I I would say that's very true. Like we tend to overanalyze and overcomplicate just about everything. The answers to most
Mm.
things are very simple. And something you said there too, like these basic needs, these basic desires or wants or whatever, like this is actually something that I discovered, that this topic in itself of when I got through my kind of depression and suicidal tendency or thoughts. I wouldn't say tendency, it
Mm.
was just like a couple moments, but um, was how did this transpire inside of me? Like, how did I get to a point where I was ready to kill myself? And through the process of understanding and sitting with my thoughts and myself, and really communicating with my consciousness, was I was very distracted and confused about the difference between needs and wants, right? And real, like, what we need to survive as humans is not very much. You know what I mean? Like some clothes, some shelter,
Some
some
water.
food. And you really kind of get, it's not, that's really all you really
Yeah.
need. It's very simple. So, but if you want to live like a very fulfilled and beautiful existence, like there's some other needs. I was like, okay, that's a very simplistic way to say what you actually need. And so I actually came up with a list of things that I need to be a
Mm.
successful human, right? And it's the first three things have to do with it's sleep, nutrition, and movement. Like you have to take care of the chemistry experiment, right? Like this body and this mind need to be put in a good spot so that I am positioned to process the external world and apply what I'm learning in
Yeah.
real time in a positive way. So those three things need to happen first. The next one is I need to practice being the
Mm.
observer, right? Like this is a need of mine. I have to be able to observe myself and how I react to the external world. The way I describe this most oftentimes is imagine observation, self-observation, going something like this. You are a person in a park sitting on a park bench just watching people and things exist. Like, you're not attached to the person throwing the frisbee. You're not attached to the two old people holding hands walking in front of you. You're not attached to the dog taking a shit on the lawn. Like, you're just a person sitting on the bench observing, right? And all these things represent a thought, an emotion, whatever, right? And you're unassociated with them. They're just passing by and coming things into it. You're very centered into who you are, right? That's the power of observation. That's how it feels. The next one is don't identify, right? Don't identify. We talked about this. Don't identify with the things that change, because everything changes. Everything changes, right? So it's not to say that you shouldn't want to feel happy or be happy or be love, like all those things you do want to be, but just understand that the flow of energy changes constantly. You're going to have moments of anger. You're going to have moments of frustration. The more you can observe those things happening and not identify with a specific emotion, the easier it is to get back to love and joy and happiness. The next one is you're a creation of your thoughts, right? So, and Buddhist philosophy talks about this all the time, is whatever you're thinking, you're pushing that into the world, right? And I talk about this all the time. Like, you need to, if you're being negative and you're thinking negative and you're placing labels on people, then that's what you're going to be. You're going to be all of these things, because you are everything you see is a reflection of you, right? So there's that one. The next one would be is, I'm trying to remember. I think I went out of order in my head, but either way, it's the next thing is just like, things are happening around you that you can't control, right? Like, there's so much chaos, so much cool stuff, so whatever is happening, like, just don't worry about it. Like, you can't control everything. The thing you can control is you, and that's what I was. That's the part where I usually say, like, you're a creation of your thoughts, right? If you get rear-ended going down the freeway and you're unexpectedly, someone hits you out of nowhere, that's out of your control. That transpired off of a series of events and you happen to be right there. But how you perceive that situation after is how you're going to project yourself into the world. So those go hand in hand. The next one is stillness, like creating space for stillness. I think especially in an entrepreneurial type of mindset or in fire, like, we have this tendency to constantly be doing something. Like, I got to move, I got to do this, I got to do that. Yeah, me too. Yeah, for sure. Like, I think many people who see this, especially in the fire world, can relate to, like, especially if you have a family, is you come back off of a 14-day roll and you sit down and your significant other, your kids got life going on, right? There's things to do. They're doing things. And all you want to do is sit on the couch and relax and kind of decompress, but you feel this immense amount of guilt for not doing something. So then you're constantly screaming around doing things, and you kind of find yourself in a position of, like, really, like, never recovering, never taking a moment for yourself. And this leads to that feeling of being lost. So creating moments of stillness is important, like creating a space where you need to meditate, where you go on a walk, where you exercise by yourself, whatever it is, whatever your flavor of stillness might be, it's very important to have that in your life. And if you get good enough, you can find stillness in one breath. So there's that. And then the next piece for me is sharing perspective, right? I think sharing perspective is one of the most powerful tools that we have, because it collectively helps us grow closer together. Like the cup that you were showing me, right? We may be talking about the same concept, but our concepts might be slightly different. And us being able to describe whatever that is gets us to turn that cup together, to discover what that is, right? It increases awareness. And then the last one's letting go. At the end of the day, we're not going to exist on this plane anymore. This body leaves us, and we have to learn how to let go. We're not taking anything with us. And the art of letting go lets us be very present in the moment so that we can enjoy the things around ourselves. So that's the list of my needs, right? everybody might have a slightly different thing. Like you can notice that I didn't say like community. Like that's a popular, like what about community? Like, well, I already have that. I have that in spades. I'm very lucky that I have always had that in my life. Right. So I don't need, that's not a that's a big need because I have that in abundance. And that's very ingrained in who I am. But that might be different for somebody else. So it could vary for people. And so now the next conversation goes to like, okay, so we've talked about needs. What about like wants and that desire stuff that we talked about? Well, this was the thing that was confusing me, right? The difference between I was confused about my needs versus my wants. Now I still have wants. I still have this want, right? I want things, but those wants are not there to fill a hole in my soul that I feel is missing, like
Yeah.
the need for love. I'm not looking for these wants for the need of love. I want things like a fast, fancy car because it looks
Yeah.
really fun and cool. It's an expression of life. That's it. Like, so that's it. And so this comes down to like what the for me the meaning of desire for me is closer to this as the definition. It's I believe desire is a distraction from us being able to experience the beauty in a moment. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
So, because desire for me is the pursuit of love, is trying to find this love when you already got it in space.
Interesting. I think it's really paramount just to just to reflect on those and realize like wants and needs are or can be very different because I think as as you were explaining you were confused wants versus needs. I feel like a lot of people and myself included like we tend to get so caught up in I need this to be happy or this is what's going to make me feel loved or accomplished and at the end of the day that is kind of leading to a lot of chaos in our society. People are so blinded by, keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, I have to have this to be successful, or this will make me a better person. And I think it's definitely worthwhile to sit back and, maybe even create the list as you did to say, these are my these are my basic needs. This is my non-negotiable list, essentially. That's very powerful.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. I think it's important. Nature is trying to express to us constantly that all of the stuff that you need in life is already here. Like our ancestors, you know, the tribal
Mm-hmm.
indigenous people knew this already. They lived off the land. They lived literally lived in nature. And so it's funny to me that I find it amusing that Instagram and commercials and TV we're like constantly perplexed and distracted by this like incessant need to look and have certain things to play a role and to like and that is the definition of like success or whatever, you know what I mean? And like you were mentioning, it can confuse us very quickly as to like where love comes from. Like we start to think like, oh, does love come from a Starbucks cup of coffee, or does love come from, like uh, what my clothes look like, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And and nature in itself is trying to express to us constantly that love is everywhere. Like, go walk in the woods and tell me not that shit isn't
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh man.
like, like I mean, a lot of people choose this career path for that reason because it gets them outside in the woods. There's like nature's constantly calling us back to these moments. So, um, yeah, I think list and just like the art of understanding ourselves, we start to understand just human nature, then we get to understand just like nature in itself, and then it can take us down these really beautiful paths.
I
So, yeah.
feel like this is probably a whole other not wormhole. I think is it C.S. Lewis that wrote The Four Loves or something like that? I
Okay,
was,
so it's
I was
oh, there's the
okay.
I'm trying to plug my phone in real quick.
Well,
Give me a second.
but
Um, there's the
that's
Four
a
Agreements.
phenomenal
That's
book. Yeah,
somebody else, I think.
phenomenal book. Um,
Yeah, 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 for sure.
I think it was C.S. Lewis. I haven't read the book, but I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was mentioned. Um, and essentially, the thought process is there are four different types of love, where you have like I love coffee, well, decaf. I drink decaf, but I love coffee. I love taking walks in the woods. I love beaches, going to the beach, whatever. Like, there's things that you are fond of, or you can have like familial love. Like, I love my mom. I love my sister. I love my cousin, whatever. Then like the erotic love, like you're attracted to someone. And I forget the fourth type of love, but it was very intriguing. I've heard of the concept before, and I would like to study more about it. But just thinking in terms like you said, everything is love. There's so much love around us. Now there are different types of love, but like you said, I think everything everything in our existence is love on some level. And I don't know, like when you just sit back and observe that, it's like, wow, life is actually really beautiful. And it's not the doom and the gloom, and it's not watching the news and everybody being fearful with no end. It's just fear for the sake of fear. Like, there is so much love. And especially, from for myself running this business, I like the business stuff is cool, but aside from all of that, I love the connection. Like, I've really enjoyed having these chats with people. I love connecting with other people around the states or even in other countries. Like, to me, sharing love and the human experience is the ultimate fulfillment. Like, for myself, I guess you could say that's a need, is just maybe like sharing love with other people. It is so fulfilling.
Yeah, I would say like I would say love. I mean, it's a need. It is a need, but it's more of
Mm-hmm.
like it is your nature, because if everything's love, so are you. So like your nature is to be that. You know what I mean? So like anything that gives you the ability to express that love and also gives other people to express it in like a communal form where we're sharing our perspectives, like that is creation, right? You are continuing to create this thing, right? So that's the beauty of it, right? And so yes, it's so easy to like look outside and see the distraction, the desire, the fear, not a fear from not a fear of creation, not a fear that leads to creation, but a fear that leads to doubt, right? It's very easy to
Mm-hmm.
find all that like in many places. So, and that would be something for me, it's like I see that fear out there. Like what I fear is my fear is like not being able to continue to create this love, not being able to continue to create anything that is expressed in love. And so, like, to me, that's motivating me to continue to do it. Right. And the same with you. So I think that's beautifully said. I think that's great. Yeah. I think this is the endeavor that most of us are trying to get to, honestly, is trying to do these things that provide that fulfillment, right? That fullness, like where we have our fill until we are full. That's
Right?
fulfillment.
Yeah.
Like so that so that's
Huh.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Man. Yeah. I think I think it takes how do I put this? I think it takes people recognizing that, like stepping back and saying, okay, is this fear motivating, or is this fear stopping me in my tracks? Is this creating doubt? Um, and it's a matter of choosing to use fear as motivation to bring more love into existence.
Yes. Yeah. There's choice is definitely a part of it, right? So from what I one of the things I've done in my life, I've been like a health and wellness coach for many years now, 15 or so years or something like that. But from all things like nutrition and like physical fitness type stuff, like all these things. And one of the things that really used to frustrate me, like that, like really bad, is trying to is like taking on a client, building a protocol or a program for them, coaching them through it, because one of their goals is they want to look good in a bathing suit when they go to Mexico or Hawaii or some shit, right? And you spend all this time and they pay you all this money, and you are dumping your love into a passion of like whatever, helping people or whatever it might be. And you do this for the person, and they reach their goal, they're very happy, they go on their vacation. You ask like, hey, let's meet up, let's get back together, like see if we can continue to do this and find more results, and it's crickets. Come to find out they've gained all the weight back, like everything, happens, and it was a very frustrating endeavor for me, right? And I would get so frustrated about putting forth all this energy into something that wasn't sustainable, because I wasn't in it for like
Right.
the cash, you know what I mean? I was in it because I seeing the difference in somebody, and then seeing that person be motivated to become something better than they
Yeah.
were was very, very cool to me. And we also do this to our family, though. We do this to our significant others, we do this to our kids, like we do this all the time, like trying to get them to do, like we get a change, like, hey, you need to do this now, like, or whatever it is, right? I've had many of these problems. The thing I realize now, though, is we need we need the pain to make the choice, right? Having someone tell us to do something, or being motivated by an external reason, right, to look good in a bathing suit, like that's a
Mm-hmm.
reason. I'm not saying it's a bad reason. Is is lacking the intrinsic reason why we want to do something. And this intrinsic reason to do something, oftentimes when we get to the choice to make that intrinsic choice, it has to come from it comes from transitioning from deep pain. Like a lot of times people have to fall on their face to find that courage to change something about themselves. And we as people need to not want to push them in the direction of finding that healing, but instead creating a space so that they can discover that on their own, so that when they're ready to, it's there for them, versus forcing them to do it, right? So this is like kind of like the aspect of the importance of pain, right? The importance of fear. Like these negative emotions can
Mm-hmm.
propel us into becoming something greater. So instead of pushing pain and pushing fear away, embrace what it has to teach you, because that's a transition point in your life. That's a point in your life to do
Yep.
something different, to do something more creative.
I'm nodding my head. I definitely don't want to get into the details, but just certain things that have happened with people that are very close to me. Um, as an observer, I have seen someone who has gone through something like a very not ideal situation, and other people who keep saying, "Oh, you need to get over it," or "Oh, you need to heal," or "Oh, you need to be better," "Oh, just basically get your shit together." And what I have seen is said person really just kind of like fighting back and being like, "No, well, you want me to change, but I'm not going to." Like, instead of coming into their own and going through all of those emotions, going through the rough stuff, um, I don't know. It's just been like a constant, excuse me, a constant back and forth, where now instead of the person feeling the pain, feeling the hurt, coming into their own, they're now so focused on, okay, well, you're telling me that I need to be better. Well, now I'm just not going to be better. And it's such a, in my opinion, it's such a unhealthy situation. Um, and kind of, I guess, kind of tying back to like the mental health thing too. I grew up like my parents are very much like, well, put your boots on, like put your big girl pants on and get your shit together and pick up and go. And it's taken me a while to come around to the fact, like, we have emotions for a reason. Like, we're all created with emotions. We feel things, some maybe more deeply or tune into it more deeply, and some others maybe not. Um, but when we go through things that are difficult, I think it's really important to, I hate to say sit with it, but on some level, like, you do just need to process and feel those things. And like you said, that pain, that hurt has the ability to spur you to grow beyond it, to learn, to make your situation better moving forward. And I really hope, I don't know, I hope that people collectively can start shifting towards that mindset instead of put up and shut up, um, just to like reflect and feel the things and move forward. Like, let people have that moment to pause and let it out, keep going. You know, I think that's really important.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that there's, it's funny because generationally, as parents, like I'm a parent, and so there's an aspect to being a father or a parent in general, when you're asking your kids to like, you know, put up or shut up, like pull your big girl pants on. I'm a dad of two girls, so like, and I've done this to my children too. Like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Like, just
Right.
wipe the dirt off and let's
Shake
keep
it off.
going. And a part of it, yeah, a part of it is like from like a parent perspective, and is like, hey, like I, at least for me, I'm coming at it from an aspect of like,
Yes.
you can do more. I know that this is transient, and I know that you're going to become that
Yes.
this is pain is going to go away, and you'll know not to do that again or do it again or whatever it is, and you're going to learn from this and you're going to evolve. I know
Mm-hmm.
that because I'm mature. Do we have those conversations with our children? Most of the time, no. There's the other aspect to it too, though, is like, because there's the other aspect of it too, is like, this is what I was told as a kid, like this is the right way to do it, like this is just the way we're going to do it, like with no further understanding of the growth that someone can
Yep.
achieve through that pain, right? And so this feeling continues to walk down the generational line, and oftentimes can manifest in a little girl, a little boy, uh, um, between the within the first 14 years of their life, typically, um, in doubt. It turns into doubt. It turns into this feeling of not being loved. Like, my dad's telling me to just wipe it off. He doesn't love me. You know what I mean? Or like whatever it is. Like, my dad's saying
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. Like, this can create this very intrinsic feeling of not being valued as a person or cared for when you're in a very
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable state as a child. And then that feeling gets carried on forever to adulthood, or into like your
Yep.
kids or whatever it might be, right? So like you're saying, like sitting with your emotions, like there's an aspect to, yes, like brush it off and get
Yep.
up, like you got this, like it's just a boo boo,
Mm-hmm.
like let's keep going, you got this, okay? Like there's an aspect to motivating yourself to continue. The problem is if when we get into adulthood and we keep shoving these emotions down, like the fear, the anger, these emotions that we would
Right.
label negative, get put into a get put into the Coke bottle and then shaken up at some point, and then someone pops the cap, right? So we need to, like you're saying, sit with these emotions, sit with these deep, deep feelings that we're having, and get good at observing them so that we can understand them and actually learn from them as to where they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
take us as people. So I agree with everything you just said there.
Thank you.
I thought it was beautifully said.
Yeah, and I think for me, my observation again, a big part of it is growing up and not really seeing examples of how to process the emotions and those negative things, like you said. Um, there's so many different, like, I forget the word, but like, I don't know, the happy wife, happy life, or all those different little sayings that we have about like, oh, that's typical, that's how it is in a marriage, or that's how it is with parents and their kids. And when you grow up learning those different, I don't really know what you call it, like those examples, I guess. And you,
Stories.
stories, yeah, the
They're called
scripts.
stories.
Right,
That's
right.
how we call them.
When you
Yeah.
grow up with those and maybe you don't have the examples of, how to sit with your emotions, 20, 30 years later, you're a grown adult and you are still in that mindset of, okay, put up and shut up, or happy wife, happy life. This is just the way it is. This is who I am. This is how life is. And I know for me, it has taken a lot of very uncomfortable conversations. It has taken a lot of pain. It has taken a lot of time, but also some really beautiful moments to come around to that like new awareness, I guess, to be like, man, I've got 30 years of this bullshit that I've been living my life with, but I can process that and move forward and change my script, change my story. Like I am not that stationary being. I am love. I am change. I have the ability to create and move forward and not hold on to all of the doubt and fear. It's that is like by far for myself, like that is by far one of the biggest accomplishments of my life. And that is still an ongoing process, but that evolution of who I was and who I currently am and who I want to become, like, damn, that is just there's no words for that. It's so uh,
I love everything you just said. That was awesome. There's nothing more to say.
yeah,
That was
thank you.
beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the power of these conversations, right? We get to express ourselves right now, and I think and we get to come to some solutions on a deeper level about what it means to be human. And I think and that's what humanity is, right? It's an expression of us, So yeah,
I
that was beautiful. Thank you.
this kind
That
of
was really
stuff
cool.
makes me happy as well. Like talking about this, sharing with other people, like getting the conversations going. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will come away from this conversation, I promise you,
I'm
really
feeling
charged
it.
up.
I'm like, yeah, this is good. It's a good day.
That's what we should be here for
Yeah,
people, like in those ways, like I think, and I think that's the importance, that's the journey I'm on now, is like like this is what service is. This is what living a life of servitude is. It's doing this, right? Like provide. I've never met you until now,
yeah, right.
and I'm still talking to you through a screen. But the end of the day, like we're doing something very beautiful by creating a space where we both can express
Mhm.
ourselves authentically. Like this is the goal for me, right? So everybody always asks me like, "Oh, how do I get a job? How do I become a hotshot?" I'm like, "Dude, step one, are you a good person? Like good people happen to be good hotshots. Like do some self work, do some observation. Like this job is not easy. It's not for everybody, And if you're coming into something that already is very, very challenging and very difficult in your life, and you haven't dealt with past trauma yet, like your cup is going to overflow very fast, because we're going to put you in very hairy situations that are going to be very hard to recover from it in a quick. So it's like understand who you are. Take that time to like learn about yourself. You know what I mean? And so I think, I got to jump off here pretty quickly, but I think it's a good segue into explaining how I did this. Like, like people might think like, oh, I just sit in did I go to like Tibet or Tibet and like meditate with monks in the mountains? Or like what did I do? And I was like, and the reality is for me is no, I didn't. I went to very sacred places in Mexico, Costa Rica, places around the world that allowed me to participate in plant medicines, and specifically ayahuasca and mushrooms. And these very safe spaces and sacred spaces allowed me to discover very deep things about myself. They allowed me to heal from past traumas. They allowed me to discover my love. They allowed me to understand my thoughts of suicide and move past them, and truly not have those thoughts. Like, I can remember what those were, and I can give so much gratitude to the pain and suffering that I've had my entire life, and that moment for sure, because it has brought me to a place of very, very strong being and peace where I'm at now. So it's not about forgetting about those things and leaving them away. Like, they're a part of me forever, but I have so much gratitude for them, and I have forgiveness for myself for the way I felt in those moments. But psychedelics have been a very big part of my healing process, and to the point now where I'm very much engaged in um, with folks in a legal context in Mexico, specifically in practicing and delivering safe spaces for all types of people, but for sure first responders in this process, and being able to discover themselves through different plant medicines, or not too. Sometimes it's there's really great people out there that are doing really awesome work that involve different types of medicines, right? Anything can be medicine. And actually, we can get, if we can find ourselves correctly, we can get to the point where we discover we are the medicine, and we don't need to take meds, right? Or whatever, right? We are become the medicine. So what people like, I think it's Of the Ashes. If people want to look her up, Ashley is her name. She does a lot of really great holistic mental health work. And then Thomas Warham, he has like 7 Ways to Medicine, or Mountain Mind Tricks is something that he does. And those two individuals are doing amazing, amazing work as far as first responders go, or just people in general, and being able to break down traumas and things like this and discover new things about themselves without any kind of plant medicine. I think those two people are doing really, really cool shit. So I just want to make sure I give a shout out to that. But I also want to be transparent too, like, if I'm going to express all these things, I need to express every aspect of myself, and I have to be very honest that I have done a lot of this with plant medicines, and I think that it's a really exciting time where these compounds are becoming more widely accepted in our culture again, and there's other places that are in the United States that are doing really great things with psilocybin and MDMA therapies for depression and things like this. And it's a really exciting time that these things are becoming widely used again in a therapeutic and professional way, and I think that's in a safe way. So that's really exciting. But that's how I've done a lot of my stuff. So I just wanted to be honest about that, and then also, maybe, if you have any more questions for me, for sure. But I just want to make sure people know that I'm here and I'm available. Like, I talk with people daily about this stuff constantly, right? And I don't want people to think that they're out there doing things on their own. Like, they're not. We're all here to help people learn how to be themselves, how to express themselves, how to recover from, how to lose that doubt, right? So that they can manifest into the things that they want to become. And I am for sure someone that is willing to help people figure that out for themselves in whatever way that is. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I am so
Yeah.
thankful that we were able to do this, and I'm very thankful for all of your words too. This is not that I haven't enjoyed all the other chats. I totally have, but like, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, Man,
It's my
I feel
pleasure.
like I need to just go like sit in the stillness now and just kind of let it wash over me. Like, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Where do you
We
live,
we're
or what
currently in
area do
Humboldt
you live
County.
in?
But I'm kind of back and
Oh,
forth
okay.
between here and Alaska. That's home. But we're hoping
Oh, okay.
to,
Okay. Is it sunny up there?
yeah, kinda. So it's peeking through, but there's a lot of gray.
I would say, yeah, yeah. I would recommend if you do want to sit in
Yeah.
stillness to go outside
I
and
mean,
enjoy
it's
nature.
not pouring down rain or snowing,
Yeah,
so it's a good time.
that's always good.
Awesome.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad this worked out. I'm always,
You,
it's a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm sure our paths will cross in
I
real
sure
life
hope
at
so.
some point.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Cool. Well,
Yeah,
thank you again.
yeah,
I will go ahead and post
yeah,
this, and then I have other platforms that I share it on. So if folks weren't able to tune in,
yes,
they can
please.
catch it on the replay. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your
Excellent.
Saturday. Cool. All right. Thanks,
You
Ben.
too. Take care. And thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you to everybody who showed up. Much love.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.